Hello everyone. Today I'm going to share a video about how did the Ottomans see themselves in their own history writing. What did they think about their position in world history? This is a question that they grappled with. There's a tendency in history-based entertainment to position the Ottoman Empire as a kind of inheritor of Rome, by which I mean the Latin Empire, Latin dominant empire linguistically, capital city in the city of Rome, and with a successor state, Greek-speaking successor state in what we call the Byzantine Empire, or what today some people would like to call the Eastern Roman Empire. At any rate, but this is done usually to present the Ottoman Empire as a kind of cosmopolitan counterpart to Europe, and there is some basis for this. The sultans did have a rarely used title, the Kaiseri Rum, the Caesar of Rome. And I considered making this video to address the use of this title, but I thought it would rather be more productive to explain where the Ottomans viewed themselves in world history and how they presented this. The 16th century saw the production of universal histories by Ottoman scholars from the time of the first prophets to the present. This is, of course, the prophets of the Islamic tradition, some of them shared with the Hebrew Bible and Christian scriptures. Gelibolulu Mustafa Ali, who lives from 1541 to 1600, wrote perhaps the most well-known and widely read of these chronicles, The Essence of History, called Künhü'l-Ahbâr. Ali was born in Gallipoli, Gelibolulu, and came from a probably Bosnian background. Essence was composed in 4 volumes, with the final volume concerning his own time up to the year 1592. And this is an old genre in Islamic historiography, the universal history. Ali's essence was divided into 3 parts within the 4 volumes. The first volume, or pillar as he called it, Rükün, is a narrative of creation to the time of Muhammad and Islam. And as I said, with an emphasis on the prophets, the first volume contains these Islamic prophets such as Abraham and David or Davud. The second part, consisting of volume 2, covers the Arab caliphates, linguistically, culturally, to the end of the Abbasid Caliphate as an independent dynasty. This is, of course, at the hands of the Mongols in the 13th century, but the Abbasid Caliph had been quite weak even before that. Thereafter, Ali turns to the history of the Turks and the Mongols, which includes the history of states that were around at the same time as the Ottomans. And then the 4th volume then covers the history of the Ottoman dynasty until Ali's period. So that would be from about circa 1300 to the 1580s, 1590s. The narrative arc of Ali's crowning achievement is oriented toward justice and authority, with his attention firmly focused on the development of these concepts in the post-Caliphal Islamic world. For Ali, the conquest of Byzantium and possible inheritance from it was a minor issue compared to situating the Ottoman dynastic state in the broader sweep of Turco-Mongol history. This is somewhat ironic, as the Ottomans were not a nomadic steppe empire as the Mongols had been, or their contemporaries in the Uzbek Khanate of Bukhara, and they existed at the same time with the Ottomans in the 16th century. The third volume of Essence is indeed an examination of Turco-Mongol dynasties, so starting with Chinggis Khan or Genghis Khan, Timur, also called Tamerlane, the Seljuks, and several others, like, for example, the Acculturaion and Karakoyunlu in Iran and Mesopotamia. While the Byzantines, referred to as Rum, are mentioned, they do not appear prominent in Ali's presentation of history. That is, like, there's no chapter devoted to the Byzantines, examining their dynastic history. And as a kind of aside, it's unclear whether Ali would have been able to know that. Probably didn't know Greek, or would have had access to Greek chronicles. That's not to say that there were not Greeks in the Ottoman Empire writing that kind of Byzantine history, but I don't really know that material. So that's an interesting question. You may want to look into. The main historical preoccupation of Ali was therefore situating the Ottomans in the Islamic historical tradition and weighing questions that many Islamic ulama had pondered since the 1258 Mongol dethroning of the Abbasid Caliphate. Ali did not believe that Ottoman legitimacy rested on universal pretensions like the Abbasids or even those of the Mongols. Rather, Ottoman authority was regional and bound up in the Qanun or sultanic law that was distinct from the Sharia or religious law. Good governance on the basis of the Sharia and Qanun through the authority of the Sultan was most important. And we can think about the Qanun as a kind of like civil law code. And both the Qanun and the Sharia functioned as like a common law system similar to that. Like if you are in the United States or Britain has a common law system, it's somewhat similar to that, and that it's the kind of accumulation of decisions that shapes how the law is executed, and relying on the earlier tradition. Ultimately, his immediate, that is Ali's immediate frames of historical reference were the Mongols and later Timurids, insofar as the Ottomans, by which I mean the military administrative class that ran the empire, were, quote, Roman, had to do with geography and for some a very distant ancestry. But in the case of Mustafa Ali, neither the Byzantines nor the classical Romans loomed very large in his historical imagination. And I should also add here, Mustafa Ali, after his death, becomes probably the most famous Ottoman historian and even poet, literary figure for a long time. His works are cited by future Ottoman scholars, and in contemporary research today. I mean, he's still heavily relied upon. His Künhü'l-Ahbâr, and I also wrote a few other works. Despite Ali's focus on the steppe empires of Turkic Central Asia and the Mongols, the Ottomans were ironically least alike to their contemporaries in Bukhara or the earlier Seljuks. By Ali's time, the imperial bureaucracy and military was made up of many Bosnians, Albanians, and other ethnic groups. The other, somewhat later, kind of past Ali's lifetime, the Circassians, the Cherkess, would become another, dominant group among the elite. Nomads still present in Anatolia were not political players on the same level as they were in contrast to the Safavids of Iran, for example, where the Shahs had to kind of constantly negotiate with the Kizilbash emirs. You do have, of course, nomads in Anatolia that are quite important, and also the Kurdish emirs, things like that, but they're not kind of implicated in the bureaucratic administration of the state as such. Ali and others like him were of Balkan ancestry, predominantly, or of a mixed Ottoman ethnicity that was that was a combination of Balkan, Old Anatolian, Turkish, and other sources. And we could even say that the Balkan identity is kind of bound up within the Ottoman ethnicity. This is a question, I think, that hasn't really been adequately dealt with in the scholarship. The expansion and growth of the empire from the 14th century to Ali's time created many social dynamics and institutions that were uniquely Ottoman. And I'll say here in contrast, so Ali is preoccupied with the Timurids. And the Timurids, for all of Tamerlane's great conquests, they don't really ever get around to developing this bureaucratic administrative system that is lasting. Now, they do that, for example, under Shah Rukh, tries to start doing this. You see differentiation of the kind of the different bureaucracies, an attempt to make a complex financial administration, things like this. This is discussed in the book Timurids in Transition, an excellent book on this. But they're never quite successful. The Timurid princes are kind of always fighting. And again, you still have this kind of Turkic military element that's not fully subsumed to the state. This is a sort of going concern in Iran for a few centuries. This is what I referred to earlier with the Qizilbash. These are the Turkic warriors in the Safavid dynasty that form the basis of the Safavid military power, but they are, again, always at odds. The Timurids before them have the same problem, and then the kind of regime that's strong in sort of Western Iran between the Timurids and the Safavids, the Acculturaion, you have a similar issue with this, and that's discussed in a book, The Crisis of Kingship in Late Medieval Islam. But anyway, so that's kind of some of the note of contrast. Suleiman, and turning to the Ottomans, so what did the Ottomans do differently? Suleiman the Magnificent, who reigns 1520 and 1566, probably needs little introduction, but at any rate, his program of military expansion as he really expands the empire into Hungary and sort of Central European region. This is probably best known in the popular mind, but perhaps more important, and I would say this was more important myself, was the establishment of a state-ordered legal system, the empire, and the expansion of the bureaucracy. The empire was governed by a sophisticated bureaucracy that oversaw the finances and logistics of a vast empire by the 16th century. Contemporaries of the Ottomans, either the Safavids of Iran or Uzbeks of Bukhara, did not follow the same path. Although the Safavids do have a bureaucracy, but again, that's sort of always in negotiation with the Qizilbash tribal emirs. Ali was correct to identify the antecedents of Ottoman rule in Turco-Mongol history, but within the Künhü'l-Ahbâr, he also seems to have understood that his empire was part of yet another epoch in world history. And I think if you have watched to the end, that's what I would like to emphasize, is that I think we should think about the Ottomans as developing something unique and something new, that it was sort of a synthesis of things that came before it, and maybe Byzantium is in there rather distantly, but if we look at what Mustafa Ali thinks, he's clearly situating this within Turco-Mongol history, but that just because of the contingencies of Ottoman expansion and the course of Ottoman history up to his time, it was also something quite new and unique even among contemporary Islamic states, and was significantly different than the kind of European monarchies like the Habsburgs that also had to develop new institutions, new systems of governing, but were quite different from the Ottomans in many ways. So I hope you found this informative, at least. Mustafa Ali is a very fascinating author, and I encourage you to try to check out his works. His Ottoman Turkish can be quite difficult to read, but it is rewarding, I think. So with that, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you all in the next video.